Several months ago, a close friend of mine asked me to go ice skating with him. Prior to us meeting, he had played and adored ice hockey for almost 12 years, that is, until there was no team left to play with. 6 years later, he still keeps his game-winning pucks on display. From nostalgic stories to obvious excitement regarding his gym class's floor hockey unit, it's easy for me to see that he would give anything to play again. When he asked if I would go ice skating with him, however, I said no. I didn't say no because I didn't care how much it meant to him or because I didn't want to go. I said no because I was afraid. I was afraid of falling and embarrassing myself in front of strangers, in front of the boy who had spent 12 years of his life on the ice. So I told someone who spent 6 years waiting for the opportunity to step foot under the ice again that he would have to wait. This is just one of countless instances when I've given into fear, and unfortunately, this time, it affected someone I really care about. As someone with chronic anxiety, situations like this are pretty common. Forever deemed the shy or sensitive kid, I've struggled to manage stress and fear for years. I live in fear, and it drives my decisions almost daily. I know what it's like to be painfully aware of the possibilities of the future without having the courage to chase them. I know what it's like to feel stuck and to be my own worst enemy. And I know that no one should be living like this. But the truth is, many of us are. So many of us live in fear. And before you scoff, remember that not all fears are intense or obvious. How about that phone call you avoided because you were worried that your mother would chew you out? How about that job you never applied for because you thought you'd bomb the interview? What about the painting, book, or other project you never started because you thought you wouldn't be good enough? We all do this. We all feel fear on all different levels, and many of us avoid those fears. This holds us back tremendously. That interview you avoided could have led to a great job and an amazing relationship with your boss or your coworkers. That phone call you avoided could have cost you a pizza, one last hello or goodbye from grandma, or a feeling of closure after having that conversation you've been thinking about for weeks. Or maybe you wouldn't have gotten the job, and if you hadn't, life would have gone on and you would have learned something from any mistake made that would make the next time much easier. My point is, avoiding the things that we're afraid of gets us nowhere. So why do we do it? Why do we give in to fear? Well, every human, every man, woman, and child experiences fear. It's a completely normal part of our lives. And although it might not seem helpful to be startled by loud noises or insects or our boss, as many of us are, fear and stress responses were vital to the survival of ancient humans, especially when facing predators. According to psychologist John Call, the brain has a very specific reaction to fear. A small organ within the brain called the amygdala sends signals to the autonomic nervous system, which causes an increase in heart rate, breathing rate, and blood pressure, and releases stress hormones like adrenaline. As all this happens, blood flows toward the arms and legs, preparing the body for action. This sequence of actions is known as the fight or flight response, which prepares animals to either defend themselves or escape dangerous situations. Unfortunately, in order to initiate this physical response, our brain's center for reasoning and judgment becomes temporarily impaired. This shutdown of the brain can be harmful in today's often fast-paced and intellectual society, as decision-making can be misled by fear-fueled irrational thinking. This causes people to avoid stressful situations. When my friend had asked me to go ice skating, the thought of it made my heart race and my body tense up. I had a flood of thoughts like, what if I fall and what if I look stupid? This fearful thinking causes the body to react further, which causes the brain to shut down even more. For me, this means vicious cycles of anxious thoughts and physical stress, fueling each other until I give in. And so I do. I give in, and like many of you, I avoid whatever it is that caused that awful feeling, something that's been programmed into us for millennia. My most recent experience with this, after I completed my driver's education course, I finally got the license I had dreamed about the years beforehand. I finally had the freedom I had wanted, but when the time came, I refused to drive, scared of the mistakes I might make and how dumb I'd look making them. So it sounds like fear is all physical, right? Something innately part of us. This would explain the fear of carnivores, large spiders, large machines, and the dark, among other things. Well, not quite. Fear can also be learned, and it's not always about real threats. Students, for example, experience high levels of stress due to performance anxiety, despite any direct correlation between grades and physical well-being. This anxiety is likely caused by the enforcement of a relationship between poor performance and negative consequences that we experience throughout our entire educational career. I love learning. I've filled my classes with challenging courses because I'm always excited about the knowledge I could gain from them. But fear trumps this excitement after so many nights losing sleep and skipping dinner to perfect an assignment, all because I was taught to fear a bad grade. So if we can learn from fear, who's to say that we can't unlearn it? In order to do this, we must change our relationship with fear. I know it seems a little odd to say that we have a relationship with emotion, but bear with me. I believe that many of us have a relationship of trust with our fear. As with other emotions, when we feel fear, it feels very real, and whatever triggered the emotion, whether it be a natural predator or simply a meeting at work, seems very, very serious. And because it feels so real, and so worthy of fear, we allow ourselves to feel afraid. We trust our gut, so to speak. But what if we challenge this feeling? What if we learn to recognize whatever emotion we're feeling, and rather than acting on it, or avoiding it in my case, we questioned it? What if we asked why we were scared and why we shouldn't be before we trusted it? In challenging fear rather than trusting it, we may learn to better identify and manage it, and by doing that, we change the relationship we have with it. The first step in changing our relationship with fear is to become more aware of it. I recently met with Lisa Rector, one of 6 founders of a program called Minds Over Matter that teaches mindfulness in schools. Mindfulness is the practice of being aware of your thoughts and feelings in the present moment without judging them. This practice allows for a deeper awareness and understanding of those thoughts and feelings, as well as a way to ground yourself in moments of arising fear or panic. This practice can be so valuable for someone who wants to understand or change negative thoughts or habits, as we couldn't possibly control something that we don't understand. In our conversation, Lisa compared the mind to a computer. When a computer has too many windows or tabs open, it can't process each task very efficiently, and it works a lot slower. Like a computer, when we have so many thoughts or windows up at once, we struggle to focus and become overwhelmed. Mindfulness allows us to not only recognize that all these windows are open, but also gives us the ability to close the ones we don't need. How do we do this? Lisa suggests several ways, including visualization, breathing, and focusing on tasks in the present moment. I know the idea of controlling thoughts like this sounds hard, but we can easily practice mindfulness methods like these every day. When washing our hands or eating, for example, Lisa suggests that we focus only on the task at hand rather than everything else we need to do that day or what everyone else is thinking about us. Personally, I like to focus on breathing. When I redirect focus to the breath, it pulls my mind away from all the negative thoughts swirling around my head. It allows me to pause so that I can begin to understand what I'm feeling and figure out how to work with it. So allow yourself these everyday moments to focus on your senses and your feelings and to just be. You may find that the most mundane tasks become the most enjoyable. Mindfulness can affect us in so many ways. In one study, college students with academic evaluation anxiety participated in an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program. Afterwards, they were said to have found, quote, an inner source of calm when experiencing anxiety. They also felt less ashamed, and when practicing outside of the program, they were curious rather than afraid, and felt more self-acceptance in difficult situations. Personally, practicing mindfulness has helped me listen to my thoughts and emotions without judging them or acting on them. I've become more aware of the way I think and behave, and this makes it so much easier for me to realize when fear is coming and stop it in its tracks. I'm learning to challenge fear rather than trust it. This is not by any means an overnight process. It can be hard, but I've finally started to take control over my own mind, simply because I'm learning how to be more aware. Now, in claiming that mindfulness is a useful method of challenging fear, I have to add that many people, such as those dealing with anxiety, emotional trauma, or a number of other challenges, might find it more difficult to manage fear with this alone. In my case, anxiety, like fear, is just as physical as it is mental. It's incredibly challenging, and it's taken years for me to recognize that I have the ability to manage it, and I still struggle every single day not to let fear control my life. And I know that I can't do it alone. Many people, including myself, rely on outside support from friends, family, professionals, or medication. I know that mindfulness might not be the ultimate end-all solution for everyone, but I believe that it's a powerful way to manage and even overcome fear. Let me reiterate, fear is a very natural part of our lives, but it doesn't have to be as big a part of our lives as it is right now. The mind is a powerful force that can influence the body and, with the right practices, challenge emotions like fear and anxiety. In the end, we must recognize that it is we who have the power to drive our decisions, rather than fear itself. Only then may we start to take back control over our lives. With awareness, understanding, and time, fear will have to take the back seat.